The Lost Girl, and the Broken Cow and Cowboy. Caleb Reed had buried 3 people he loved before his 30th birthday, and he'd sworn never to let anyone close enough to become the 4th. But on a scorching Arizona afternoon in 1883, behind a weathered general store in a town he couldn't name, he heard a child's voice singing a hymn so pure it stopped him cold, and found a 10-year-old girl with mud-caked boots and eyes too old for her face, who'd been searching alone for her vanished parents for 2 years. She looked at him without fear, without pleading, and said 5 words that would shatter every wall he'd built. "Mister, do you need help?" In that moment, neither knew they were about to save each other. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it touches your heart, hit that like button and stay until the end. Because this isn't just a story about finding family. It's about becoming one. The Arizona sun hammered down on Caleb Reed's shoulders like the hand of judgment itself. Dust rose from his boots with each step through the nameless settlement, one of dozens scattered across the territory where men came to forget, and nobody asked questions. The general store leaned against the wind, its paint peeled down to gray wood, its sign hanging by a single chain that creaked with each gust. Caleb needed supplies: beans, coffee, ammunition, the basics that kept a man moving when he had nowhere to go and no reason to stop. He'd been drifting for 3 years now, ever since the fire that took his wife and infant son, ever since he'd failed to save them because he'd been too drunk to wake when the lantern fell. The kind of failure that carved out a man's insides and left nothing but echoes. He was tying his horse to the rail when he heard it, a voice, young, clear, singing, "I will lift mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help." Caleb froze. The hymn his mother used to sing, the one they'd sung at Sarah's funeral while he stood there hollow, unable to cry, unable to feel anything but the crushing weight of his own worthlessness. He shouldn't follow the sound. He should get his supplies and ride out before sunset, same as always. But his feet moved anyway, carrying him around the side of the building where the alley opened into a bare patch of hard-packed earth. That's where he saw her. A girl. Maybe 10 years old, thin as a fence post, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that hung in a long braid down her back, coming loose in places. Her dress had been patched so many times it was hard to tell what the original fabric had been. She sat cross-legged in the dirt beside a black and white dog that looked like it had survived a dozen fights and won most of them. In front of her, she'd arranged a circle of stones, and in the center sat a small tin cup filled with wildflowers. She wasn't singing anymore. She was talking to the stones like they were people. "Papa would have liked this town," she said to the largest rock. "There's a creek just past the edge, and you know how he loved to fish early morning." She moved to a smaller stone. "Mama would say the general store needs better organization. She was always fixing things, remember?" Caleb's chest tightened. He should leave. This wasn't his business. But something about the girl's voice, steady, practical, not pleading or desperate, held him there. The dog's head came up, its ears swiveled toward Caleb, and a low rumble started in its chest. The girl turned. Her eyes found him immediately. They were gray, sharp, assessing. No fear in them, just evaluation. "You've been standing there almost a minute," she said. "Is there something you need?" Caleb blinked. Most children would have screamed or run. This one sounded like she was conducting business. "Didn't mean to intrude," he said. His voice came out rough from disuse. He hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. "Heard singing." "That was me." She stood up, brushing dust from her dress. The dog stood with her, staying close to her leg. "I sing when I'm thinking. Helps me remember things clear." "You out here alone?" "For now." She tilted her head, studying him the way someone might study a horse they were considering buying. "You look like you've been riding hard. Your horse is favoring his left front. Stone bruise, probably. There's a stable keeper 2 buildings down who's fair with his prices." Caleb glanced back at his mare. The girl was right. He'd noticed the slight hitch that morning, but figured he'd deal with it at the next town. "Observant," he said. "Have to be." She knelt down and picked up her tin cup of flowers, handling it carefully. "I'm Lily Hart. That's Scout." She nodded at the dog. "We've been in this town 4 days. Before that, we were in Prescott. Before that, Jerome. We're looking for my parents. They went missing 2 years ago." The words came out matter of fact, like she was describing the weather, but Caleb heard what lived underneath them. The practiced quality of the speech, the way someone talks when they've told the same story so many times it's become armor. 2 years is a long time, Caleb said carefully. Yes, sir. Lily set the cup down gently. Most people say that. Then they tell me my folks are probably dead and I should go to an orphanage. But they don't know my parents. Papa was smart, Mama was strong. If something happened, they'd find a way to leave me a sign. She said it with such certainty that Caleb felt something twist in his gut. He recognized that tone, hope that had hardened into stubbornness because the alternative was unbearable. You been traveling alone all that time? Mostly. Lily picked up a cloth bundle from beside the stones. People help sometimes. I work for my keep, washing dishes, mending, watching animals. Scout here is good at catching rabbits when we're between towns. We get by. A 10-year-old girl, alone on the frontier for 2 years. The thought made Caleb's jaw clench. He'd seen what happened to children out here. The lucky ones ended up in orphanages. The unlucky ones. He didn't let himself finish that thought. This town got a sheriff? He asked. Deputy, name's Morrison. I talked to him yesterday. He said he'd ask around, but I could tell he thought I was wasting his time. Lily shrugged. Lots of people go missing out here. Can't investigate them all. She spoke without bitterness, just acceptance. That was somehow worse than if she'd been angry. Caleb knew he should walk away. He'd learned the hard way that caring about people only led to loss. He'd failed his wife and son. He'd failed his brother, who died of fever while Caleb was off chasing fool dreams. He'd failed everyone who'd ever depended on him, and he'd promised himself he'd never be in a position to fail anyone again. But the girl was still watching him with those gray eyes, and he could see she was waiting for him to do what everyone else did, offer hollow sympathy, maybe a coin or two, then disappear. You eaten today? The words came out before he could stop them. Lily's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Scout caught a squirrel this morning. We shared it. That's not enough. Caleb jerked his head toward the general store. Come on, let's get you a proper meal. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Lily's face. I don't take charity, mister. If you're buying food, I need to work for it. Fair enough. You can tell me about these parents of yours. That's work. Giving information. Deal? Lily considered this. Then she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Deal. Come on, Scout. The dog fell into step beside her as they walked toward the front of the store. Caleb followed, wondering what the hell he was doing. One meal, he told himself. Then he'd ride out and forget he ever saw her. But even then, some part of him knew he was lying. Well, inside the general store, the air was cooler but thick with the smell of flour, dried tobacco, and leather. The shopkeeper, a round man with suspicious eyes, watched them enter. His gaze lingered on Lily, then moved to Caleb with a look that clearly said trouble. Help you? The shopkeeper's tone suggested he'd rather not. Need supplies, Caleb said. Beans, coffee, salt pork, and whatever the girl wants to eat. Lily had moved to the counter where jars of penny candy sat in rows. She looked at them the way someone might look at fine art in a museum, with longing but no expectation. Lily, Caleb said, pick something. The salt pork's enough, she said quietly. That wasn't the deal. Pick something. She glanced at him, then at the shopkeeper, who was making no effort to hide his impatience. Finally, she pointed to a jar of peppermint sticks. One of those, please. The shopkeeper grunted and pulled out a stick, wrapping it in paper with unnecessary roughness. That'll be $2.40 for everything. It was highway robbery, but Caleb didn't argue. He paid and gathered the supplies while Lily held the peppermint stick like it was made of glass. They stepped back into the heat, and Caleb nodded toward a bench in the shade. Sit. Tell me about your folks. Lily sat, Scout settling at her feet. She unwrapped the candy carefully, broke it in half, and offered one piece to Caleb. I don't. You bought it, she said firmly. Sharing's only fair. Caleb took the half. It tasted like Christmas, like a world he'd left behind. Lily sucked on her piece for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was steady. Papa's name was Thomas Hart. He was a surveyor, drew maps for the railroad companies. Mama was Evelyn Hart. She used to be a schoolteacher before they married. We lived in Tucson, but Papa's work took him all over. Usually we went with him. She paused, her fingers tightening on the peppermint stick. 2 years ago, we were camped north of Flagstaff. Papa was surveying a route through the mountains. I woke up one morning, and they were gone. The camp was still there, our tent, our supplies, everything. But they were just gone. No signs of struggle? Caleb asked. No, That's what made it strange. If there'd been bandits or animals, there would have been tracks, blood, something. But it was like they stood up and walked into the air. Lily looked down at Scout, who leaned against her leg. I waited 3 days. When they didn't come back, I started walking. Found a ranch family who let me stay a week. They asked around, sent word to Flagstaff. Nobody'd seen my parents. The sheriff there said they probably ran into trouble and didn't want to worry me by saying they were leaving. You believe that? No, sir. Lily's voice hardened. Papa wouldn't leave me. Neither would Mama. Something happened. Something that meant they couldn't come back right away. So I figured if I kept moving, kept looking, eventually I'd find a clue. Or they'd find me. She said it with such conviction that Caleb felt his chest tighten again. He knew what it was like to cling to hope when logic said to let go. He'd done it himself, those first months after the fire, telling himself that if he could just go back, just change one moment, everything would be different. But hope like that was poison. It kept you from accepting what was real. Lily, he said carefully, 2 years is, I know what you're going to say. She looked at him directly. Everyone says it, but until I see proof, until someone shows me a body or a grave or something that proves they're gone, I'm going to keep looking, because that's what you do when you love somebody. You don't quit. The words hit Caleb like a fist. You don't quit. But he had quit. He'd quit on life, on connection, on everything that mattered. After Sarah and the baby died, he'd crawled into a bottle and stayed there until the ranch foreclosed, and he had nothing left but a horse and a trail north. And he told himself it was easier this way, safer. But looking at this girl who'd been alone for 2 years and still had hope, still had purpose, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Where were you planning to go next? He asked. Phoenix, maybe? Or back north toward Prescott? There's a mining camp there that gets new workers every month. Sometimes men traveling through see things, hear things. Worth asking. That's a hard ride. Long way between water. We've done it before. Caleb looked at Scout, who was watching him with intelligent eyes. The dog had kept this child alive. And the child had kept herself alive through sheer will. But will only lasted so long out here. The frontier didn't care about determination. He should let her go, wish her luck and ride the opposite direction. That was the smart thing. The safe thing. Instead, he heard himself say, I'm headed north myself, Prescott direction. You want company for the ride? You're welcome to it. Lily's eyes widened slightly. It was the first real reaction he'd seen from her. Why would you do that? She asked. Because a 10-year-old girl shouldn't be traveling alone. Because your parents, wherever they are, would want somebody watching out for you. And because... He stopped. He couldn't say because you remind me that I used to be someone who helped people. Because looking at you makes me remember I'm not completely dead inside. Because it's the right thing to do, he finished. Lily studied him for a long moment. Then she stuck out her hand. I accept, but I pay my way. I can cook, tend animals, keep watch. I'm not dead weight. Caleb shook her hand. Her grip was firm, calloused. The handshake of someone who'd worked hard for everything she had. We leave at dawn, he said. There's a boarding house 2 streets over. I'll get us 2 rooms. Scout stays with me. Wouldn't have it any other way. They stood. Lily gathered her bundle of belongings, which Caleb realized was everything she owned in the world. A blanket roll, a tin cup, a small knife, and a leather pouch that probably held whatever coins she'd managed to earn. That was it. Her entire life condensed to what she could carry. He thought of his own life. A horse, a bedroll, a rifle, not much different. Maybe that's why he couldn't walk away. Because he saw himself in her. Not the child he'd been, but the wanderer he'd become. Lost, searching, holding on to something that might be gone forever. The difference was she still had hope. And maybe, just maybe, being near that hope might remind him what it felt like. The boarding house was run by a Mexican woman named Mrs. Delgado, who took one look at Lily and immediately started fussing in rapid Spanish, pulling the girl toward the kitchen while shooting Caleb a look that clearly questioned his fitness as a guardian. She hasn't eaten properly, Mrs. Delgado announced in accented English. Look at her, skin and bones. You should be ashamed. I just met her, Caleb said. Then you should have met her sooner. Come, Nina. We fix this. Lily glanced back at Caleb, something like amusement in her eyes, before letting herself be led away. Scout followed, and Mrs. Delgado didn't object, which told Caleb everything he needed to know about the woman's character. Caleb took a room for himself and paid for one for Lily. Then he went to the stable to check on his horse and give the mare the attention she needed. The stable keeper was a grizzled man with one eye who confirmed the stone bruise but said it wasn't serious. "Keep her off it for a day, she'll be fine," the man said, working a poultice into the mare's hoof. "You the fellow traveling with that girl?" Word traveled fast in small towns. "That's right. She's been through here before. 6 months back, maybe. Asked about a couple matching her folks' description. Polite kid. Sad situation. You see many missing people cases out here?" "More than I can count. Folks disappear all the time. Desert gets them, or bandits, or they just decide to start fresh somewhere new. Usually the ones who go looking end up disappointed." "She seems determined." "Determination don't change facts." The stable keeper finished with the poultice and straightened. "But I admire her for trying. Most kids would have given up or gotten themselves killed by now. She's tougher than she looks." Caleb couldn't argue with that. He spent the rest of the afternoon checking his gear, cleaning his rifle, and trying not to think too hard about what he'd just agreed to. He was a drifter. He didn't take on responsibilities. He didn't get involved. But when he returned to the boarding house that evening, he found Lily sitting on the front porch, her hair washed and braided tight, her face clean, wearing a dress that actually fit, Mrs. Delgado's work, no doubt. Scout lay beside her, and she was writing something in a small journal with a stub of pencil. She looked up when he approached. "Mrs. Delgado made me take a bath, and she gave me this dress, said her daughter outgrew it. Looks better than the old one. I like the old one. Mama made it." But Lily's voice didn't have any real complaint in it. "Mrs. Delgado's nice. She fed me so much I thought I'd burst, and she didn't ask questions that made me feel bad." Caleb sat on the step below her. "What are you writing?" "Places I've been, people I've talked to. If I find Mama and Papa, I want to be able to tell them everything. And if I don't—" She trailed off. "If you don't? Then at least there's a record, so someone knows I tried." The pragmatism in her voice, the acceptance of her own possible failure, hit Caleb hard. She was 10 years old. She should be thinking about dolls and games, not creating a record of her search in case she died before completing it. "We're not going to let that happen," Caleb said. Lily looked at him. "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe while you're looking." "Why?" The question was direct, searching. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why are you helping?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. He could lie, make up some story about civic duty or Christian charity. But something about Lily's clear-eyed gaze made him want to tell the truth. "Because I lost people too," he said finally. "And nobody helped me when I needed it. So maybe helping you is a way of, I don't know, balancing the scales." Lily considered this. Then she nodded. "That's fair, long as you're honest about it." "I'll always be honest with you," Caleb said, and meant it. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and red. Scout's tail thumped occasionally against the porch boards. Somewhere down the street, a piano played badly, and men's laughter drifted from a saloon. "Mr. Reed?" Lily said after a while. "Call me Caleb." "Caleb, do you think they're alive? My parents?" He could have lied, told her what she wanted to hear, but he'd promised honesty. "I don't know," he said. "The frontier's hard. People do disappear, but I also know that stranger things have happened. I've seen people turn up after months, after years, when everyone thought they were dead. So until we know for sure, there's no harm in looking." "That's what I think too." She closed her journal carefully. "Mrs. Delgado said you're a good man. She said she can tell these things." "Mrs. Delgado doesn't know me. She said that's why she can tell, because good men don't talk about being good. They just are." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He didn't feel good. He felt broken, used up. But maybe that was the point. Maybe you didn't have to be whole to do the right thing. Maybe you just had to show up. "Get some rest," he said, standing. "We ride out early." "Caleb?" He turned back. "Thank you for the meal, for the room, for coming with me." "You don't have to thank me, Lily." "Yes, I do. Mama taught me that. She said gratitude is how we remind ourselves we're not alone." Lily stood, called Scout, and went inside. Caleb stayed on the porch, watching the last of the light fade from the sky. You're not alone. He'd been alone for 3 years. He'd preferred it that way. Solitude meant safety. No one to lose, no one to fail. But standing there, listening to the frontier night come alive around him, Caleb realized something had shifted. For the first time since the fire, he had a reason to wake up that wasn't just survival. He had someone depending on him. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what he needed. Dawn came cold and clear. Caleb was saddling his mare when Lily emerged from the boarding house, her bundle slung over her shoulder, Scout at her heels. She moved with quiet efficiency, checking the supplies he'd packed, making sure everything was secured properly. "You know horses," Caleb observed. "Papa taught me. He said the frontier doesn't forgive ignorance, so you better learn everything you can." "Smart man." "Yes, sir, he was." The use of past tense hung in the air between them. Lily caught it too, and Caleb saw her jaw tighten slightly before she turned her attention back to the supplies. Mrs. Delgado appeared with a cloth-wrapped bundle. "For the road," she said, pressing it into Lily's hands. "And you?" She pointed at Caleb. "You take care of this one. She's special." "I know," Caleb said. Mrs. Delgado studied him a moment longer, then nodded, satisfied. "Vaya con Dios." They rode out as the sun cleared the horizon, heading north into country that grew rougher with each mile. Lily rode behind Caleb on the mare, her arms around his waist, Scout trotting alongside. She was light enough that the horse barely noticed the extra weight, but Caleb was constantly aware of her presence. The small hands gripping his coat, the way she leaned with the horse's movement like she'd done this 1,000 times. Probably had. They didn't talk much that first day. The land demanded attention, rocky ground that could turn an ankle, arroyos that appeared suddenly, the constant need to watch for water sources. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood that not everything needed words. When they stopped at midday to rest the horse and eat, Lily unwrapped Mrs. Delgado's bundle to reveal fresh tortillas, dried beef, and apples. She divided everything precisely in half, gave Caleb his portion, then broke off a piece of tortilla for Scout. "Tell me about Prescott," Caleb said as they ate. "Why there specifically?" "Last time I was there, I talked to a man at the mining office. He said surveying crews sometimes work with the mining companies, mapping claims. If Papa was working, that's where he might have gone." "That was 2 years ago. Trail's pretty cold." "I know, but I have to check." Lily took a bite of apple, chewing thoughtfully. "Besides, even if I don't find information about Papa and Mama, I can earn some money. Mining towns always need workers. I can wash laundry, cook for the camps. Scout can catch rats in the supply sheds. They pay for that." "You've got it all figured out." "Have to. Nobody else is going to figure it out for me." There was no self-pity in her voice, just fact. And Caleb found himself respecting her more with every hour they spent together. They rode until the light began to fail, then made camp near a creek where cottonwoods offered shelter. Caleb unsaddled the mare while Lily gathered firewood with practiced efficiency. Scout caught a rabbit, and Lily dressed it quickly, roasting it over flames she'd coaxed from damp wood. "You're better at that than I am," Caleb admitted, watching her work. "Papa said fire was life out here, so he made sure I knew how to start one in rain, snow, wind, didn't matter. He'd test me, make me do it over and over until I could do it half asleep." "He taught you well." "He taught me everything." Lily turned the rabbit carefully. "Mama, too. She taught me to read, write, do figures. She said education was the only thing nobody could take from you." She was right. They ate the rabbit in silence, then Lily pulled out her journal and wrote by firelight while Caleb checked the perimeter and made sure their campsite was secure. When he returned, she had already rolled herself in a blanket, Scout curled against her back. "Caleb?" Her voice was drowsy. "Yeah? I'm glad you're here." "Get some sleep, Lily." "I mean it. I've been alone a long time. It's nice, not being alone." Caleb felt something crack in his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." He watched her breathe slow and steady, watched Scout's ear twitch in sleep, and realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt responsible for anything good. The last 3 years had been about running, about putting distance between himself and the graves he'd left behind. But sitting here in the firelight, watching over this girl who'd lost everything and still kept going, Caleb felt something he'd thought was dead. Purpose. He'd failed his family. He'd failed his brother. He'd failed at being the man he'd wanted to be. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to fail at this. The fire burned down to coals. The stars wheeled overhead, and Caleb Reed, broken cowboy and wanderer, kept watch while a lost girl slept, and let himself believe that sometimes second chances came in the smallest, most unexpected forms. In the morning, they would ride for Prescott. They would search for answers that might not exist. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Caleb Reed wasn't alone. And neither was Lily Hart. The road to Prescott took them through country that shifted from desert scrub to pine-covered highlands, each mile revealing new challenges and small mercies. On the third day, they encountered a wagon train headed south, families seeking easier land, their faces weathered by disappointment and dust. Lily approached each camp with her careful questions, describing her parents, showing a small tintype photograph she kept wrapped in oilcloth. Thomas and Evelyn Hart, she'd say, holding out the image. He's tall, dark hair, usually carried surveying equipment. She's small, blonde, wore her hair in a bun. Have you seen them? Most folks shook their heads with genuine sympathy. A few offered empty encouragements. One woman pressed a biscuit into Lily's hand and said, "Keep looking, honey. Sometimes miracles happen." Lily thanked her politely, pocketed the biscuit, and moved to the next wagon. Caleb watched her work, marveling at her persistence. She never showed frustration, never let disappointment slow her down. Each rejection was simply data, noted in her journal and filed away. "You learn anything useful?" he asked when she returned to camp that evening. "Maybe." Lily settled by the fire, Scout's head in her lap. "A man in the third wagon said he worked railroad surveys 5 years back, said most surveying crews kept records with the territory office in Prescott. If Papa filed any reports, they might still be there." "That's good thinking. It's something." She stroked Scout's ears absently. "Better than nothing." They reached Prescott on a Tuesday afternoon when the town was thick with miners coming off shift, merchants hawking wares, and the particular chaos that followed money changing hands. The settlement had grown since Lily's last visit, new buildings rising on the edges, a proper jail instead of just a deputy's office, and 3 saloons where there'd been one. Caleb found them lodging at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who took one look at Lily and immediately offered her work helping with laundry in exchange for reduced rent. Lily accepted before Caleb could object, and by evening she was elbow-deep in soapy water, scrubbing miners' shirts while Mrs. Chen's twin daughters peppered her with questions. "You really traveled all this way alone?" the younger girl, maybe 8 years old, asked with wide eyes. "Mostly," Lily said, wringing out a shirt with efficient twists. "Scout helped, and I met good people along the way." "Weren't you scared?" Lily paused, considering the question honestly. "Sometimes, but Papa used to say fear is just your body telling you to pay attention. So I'd pay attention, figure out what scared me, then make a plan. Fear's only dangerous if you let it stop you from thinking." Caleb, listening from the doorway, felt that familiar tightness in his chest. Thomas Hart had raised his daughter well, taught her not just skills but philosophy, given her tools to survive not just physically but mentally, the kind of parenting Caleb had dreamed of doing with his own son before the fire stole that chance. The next morning, they went to the territorial office, a squat adobe building that smelled of paper and bureaucracy. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose, looked up with barely concealed irritation. "Help you?" "Looking for surveying records," Caleb said. "From about 2 years back? Surveyor named Thomas Hart." The clerk sighed like they'd asked him to move mountains. 2 years. You know how many surveys we process? And Hart's a common enough name." "Please," Lily said, stepping forward. "He's my father. He went missing. Any records he filed might help me find him." The clerk's expression softened slightly. "Missing, you say?" 2 years ago. He was working north of Flagstaff, but his reports might have been filed here. He was thorough. Papa never missed a filing deadline." Something in Lily's voice, the certainty mixed with longing, made the clerk set down his pen. "I'll look. But it'll take time. Records from that period are in the back storage. Come back tomorrow." "Thank you," Lily said. "Really? Thank you." Outside, the sun was bright and warm. Lily tilted her face up to it, eyes closed. "You okay?" Caleb asked. "Just tired, but that man's gonna look. That's more than most people do." They spent the rest of the day with Lily asking questions at the mining office, the assayer's shed, the general store. At each stop, she showed her tintype, asked her careful questions, noted responses. Most people remembered her from before, the polite girl looking for her parents, but nobody had new information. By late afternoon, Lily's steps had slowed. Her shoulders sagged just slightly. Caleb could see the weight of accumulated disappointment settling on her, heavy as winter snow. "Let's get something to eat," he said. "I should keep asking. There's still the freight office and—" "Lily, you've been at it all day. Even the best trackers rest." She looked at him, and for just a moment, he saw past the determination to the exhausted child underneath. "What if I miss something? What if the one person who knows something is someone I don't ask? Then we'll come back tomorrow and ask them. But running yourself into the ground won't help your parents." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay, but somewhere cheap. I need to save my earnings for travel." "I'm buying." "Caleb, I'm buying," he repeated firmly. "And that's final." They ate at a small restaurant where the proprietor served elk stew and cornbread. Lily ate mechanically at first, then with increasing appetite as her body reminded her it needed fuel. Scout waited patiently under the table, and Lily slipped him pieces of meat when she thought Caleb wasn't looking. "I see you," Caleb said. "He worked hard today, too. Scared off a snake this morning." "Did he now?" "Rattler, big one. Scout saw it before I did." Lily gave the dog another piece of meat. "He's earned it." Caleb watched her feed the dog and felt something shift in his understanding. This wasn't just a girl searching for her parents. This was someone who'd built a life around survival, who'd learned to find family in a stray dog and purpose in endless searching. She'd created meaning where most people would have found only despair. "Lily," he said carefully, "what happens if we don't find anything? If the trail's just gone?" She was quiet for a long moment, pushing stew around her bowl. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but soft. "I don't know. I used to think I'd search forever, that I'd keep looking until I was old if that's what it took. But lately—" She trailed off. "Lately what?" "Lately I've been thinking maybe Papa and Mama would want me to have a life, even if I can't find them. They raised me to be strong, to survive. Maybe part of honoring that is figuring out how to live, not just search." The maturity in her words struck Caleb silent. She was 10 years old. She should be learning multiplication and playing with friends. Instead, she was grappling with questions most adults couldn't answer. "That's wise," he said finally. "Is it? Or is it giving up?" "It's not giving up to want a future. That's called hope." Lily looked at him, and he saw tears gathering in her eyes, though she fought them. "I miss them so much. Some days I can't remember Mama's voice anymore. I try, but it's just gone. And that scares me more than anything. What if I forget them completely?" Caleb's throat tightened. He understood that fear intimately. He'd woken up once, 6 months after the fire, and couldn't remember what Sarah's laugh sounded like. The panic that followed nearly broke him. "You won't forget," he said. "Not the important parts. The way they made you feel, that stays. The things they taught you, those become part of who you are. Memory's not just about sounds and faces. It's about carrying people with you." A tear escaped down Lily's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, almost angry at herself for showing weakness. "I should be tougher than this." "You're plenty tough. But tough doesn't mean you can't hurt." She nodded, swallowing hard. Then she straightened her shoulders and went back to her stew. The moment of vulnerability passed, but Caleb knew it had been real and important. They returned to the boarding house as evening fell. Mrs. Chen was hanging laundry, and she smiled when she saw them. "Lily, the girls have been asking for you. They want you to tell them another story before bed." "I can do that." Lily glanced at Caleb. "If that's all right." "Go ahead. I'll be here." He watched her disappear inside with Scout, then turned to Mrs. Chen. "She's good with your daughters." "She's good with everyone," Mrs. Chen said, pinning up a sheet. "That child has an old soul. She's seen too much, I think. But she's kind. That's rarer than people realize." "You're right about that." Mrs. Chen gave him a sharp look. "You're not her father." "No. But you care about her." It wasn't a question, but Caleb answered anyway. "I do." "Good. She needs someone who cares. World's too hard for children to face alone." Mrs. Chen picked up her empty basket. "Your supper's on the stove if you're hungry. Lily already ate, but I made extra." "Thank you." Caleb sat on the porch as darkness settled over Prescott. Inside, he could hear Lily's voice telling some story about a princess and a dragon, hear the Chen girls' delighted laughter. The sound was so normal, so domestic, it made his chest ache. He'd been avoiding normalcy for 3 years, avoiding anything that reminded him of what he'd lost. But sitting here, listening to a little girl tell stories to other children, he realized avoidance hadn't protected him from pain. It had just made him hollow. The door opened. Lily emerged, Scout at her heels. "Girls asleep?" Caleb asked. "Almost. I told them tomorrow I'd teach them a game Papa taught me." She sat down beside him. "Mrs. Chen says we can stay as long as we need. She likes having help with the laundry. That's generous of her." "People can be generous, just have to give them a chance." Lily tilted her head back, looking at the stars. "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "I think people are mostly good. The frontier makes them hard sometimes, makes them suspicious. But underneath, most folks want to help. They just need someone to ask the right way." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "If people are mostly bad, then everything's hopeless. But if they're mostly good, then there's always a chance things can get better." Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways the world was cruel and indifferent. But looking at this girl who'd faced more hardship than most adults and still chose optimism, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Maybe she was right. Maybe faith in people wasn't naive. Maybe it was brave. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll check back with that clerk." "Caleb?" She looked at him seriously. "If we don't find anything in the records, I want to stay here a few weeks, earn some money. Mrs. Chen said the mining camps always need laundry done, and I can make good wages." "You don't have to work, Lily. I know you can. But I need to pull my weight. Papa always said people respect you when you contribute, and I want to save money, in case—" She didn't finish. "In case of what?" "In case I need it, for whatever comes next." The weight in those words made Caleb's heart hurt. She was planning for a future without her parents, not giving up on finding them, but acknowledging she might have to build a life regardless. "Okay," he said, "we'll stay a few weeks, let you earn, and we'll keep asking questions." "Thank you." She stood, called Scout quietly. At the door, she paused. "Caleb? I know I already said it, but I'm really glad I met you. These past few days have been the first time in 2 years I haven't felt completely alone." She went inside before he could respond, leaving him sitting in the dark with her words echoing in his head. "The first time in 2 years I haven't felt completely alone." He knew that feeling, that bone-deep loneliness that came from being surrounded by people but belonging to none of them, from moving through the world like a ghost. But these past few days, riding with Lily, watching her persistent hope, feeling responsible for someone again, it had been different. The loneliness had eased. Not disappeared, but softened around the edges. And Caleb realized something that both terrified and comforted him. He wasn't just helping Lily. She was helping him too. The next morning brought rain, unusual for the season, but welcome. Lily insisted on helping Mrs. Chen move the laundry inside before they went to the territorial office. By the time they arrived, both were damp and Lily's boots squelched with each step. The clerk looked up when they entered, and Caleb saw something shift in his expression, something that made his stomach drop. "You found something," Lily said immediately. The clerk nodded slowly. "I found records. 3 survey reports filed by Thomas Hart between January and March of 1881. Detailed work, railroad routes through difficult terrain, professional quality." "That's Papa," Lily said, moving closer. "Can I see them?" "Of course." The clerk laid out 3 bound reports, each filled with precise measurements, hand-drawn maps, notes in careful handwriting. "Your father was thorough. These are excellent surveys." Lily's hands trembled as she touched the papers. "This is his writing. This is definitely his writing." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "This proves he was here, that he was working." "Yes." The clerk hesitated. "But there's something else you should know." Caleb's jaw tightened. "What?" "After March 1881, there are no more reports from Thomas Hart. Not just here, I checked with the main territorial office in Phoenix. He filed these 3 surveys, collected payment, and then nothing. It's like he stopped working entirely." "Or something happened to him," Lily said quietly. "Possibly." The clerk pulled out another document. "I also found this, a letter addressed to the territorial office, filed about 6 months after your father's last survey. It's from a mining company up in Jerome. They'd hired Thomas Hart for a project, but he never arrived. They wanted to know if there'd been an accident, if anyone had heard from him. Lily took the letter with shaking hands. Caleb read over her shoulder. The mining company had been waiting for Thomas Hart to begin surveying their expansion claims. He'd confirmed the job, given them a start date, then simply vanished. "Jerome," Lily whispered. "That's where I was 6 months ago. I asked around, but nobody mentioned this." "The mining company closed down shortly after," the clerk said. "Ran out of capital. The men who wrote this letter are long gone." Lily set the letter down carefully. Her face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "So Papa was supposed to go to Jerome, but he never made it. And that was around the time he and Mama disappeared." "It appears so. The route from here to Jerome, it goes through rough country, doesn't it?" Caleb knew where she was going. "Some of the roughest in the territory. Steep terrain, Apache raids were common back then. Weather can turn dangerous." Lily nodded slowly. "So something happened between here and Jerome. Something that stopped them from reaching the job." "That's what the timeline suggests," the clerk said gently. "But you don't have any records of accidents? No reports of attacks or anything?" "I'm afraid not. The territory keeps records when it can, but 2 years ago things were less organized, and if something happened in a remote area—" The clerk trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. Lily gathered the papers carefully. "Can I make copies of these? The maps, the letter?" "Of course. I'll help you." They spent an hour copying information into Lily's journal, Caleb watching as she worked with painstaking precision. Her hands were steady, her face composed, but he could see the storm of emotions behind her eyes, hope and grief tangled together so tight they were indistinguishable. Outside, the rain had stopped. Puddles reflected the sky in broken fragments. "What are you thinking?" Caleb asked as they walked back toward the boarding house. "I'm thinking I need to go to Jerome. Search the route they would have taken. Maybe there's something, wreckage, a grave marker, anything." "Lily, that was 2 years ago. Rain, wind, scavengers. There might not be anything left to find." "I know, but I have to look." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "This is the first real lead I've had. The first proof that something specific happened in a specific place. I can't just ignore it." "I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying we need to be realistic about what we might find." "What do you think we'll find, Caleb? Tell me honestly." He looked at her, this fierce, determined child who'd been searching for 2 years and still hadn't learned to quit. He could lie, could give her false hope, but he'd promised honesty. "I think if your parents were alive and able, they would have found a way to contact you by now. I think something bad happened, and the chances of finding answers after all this time are slim." He paused. "But I also think you won't have peace until you search that route yourself. So if you need to go to Jerome, we'll go." Lily's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "Thank you for telling me the truth, and thank you for understanding why I have to keep looking. When do you want to leave?" "Not yet. I want to work here for Mrs. Chen a few weeks like I planned, earn some money, and—" She looked down at Scout, who'd been waiting patiently. "I want to prepare myself for whatever we find, or don't find." They returned to the boarding house where Mrs. Chen put Lily straight to work. Caleb watched her scrub laundry with fierce concentration, watched her teach the Chen girls to braid rope, watched her laugh at Scout's antics. To anyone else, she looked like a normal child having a normal day. But Caleb saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She was processing what they'd learned, preparing herself for what came next. That evening, after the Chen girls were asleep and Mrs. Chen had retired, Lily came to find Caleb on the porch. She sat beside him without speaking, and they watched the town settle into night. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about what you said, about how if they were alive and able, they would have found me." "Lily, no, let me finish." She took a breath. "You're probably right, and I think part of me has known that for a while. But I couldn't admit it because admitting it felt like giving up, like saying they didn't matter." "They matter," Caleb said firmly. "They'll always matter." "I know, but maybe mattering doesn't mean I have to search forever. Maybe it means I live the kind of life they'd be proud of." She pulled her knees up again, resting her chin on them. "Papa used to say the mark of a person isn't how they handle the good times. It's how they handle loss, whether they let it destroy them or forge them into something stronger." "Sounds like a smart man." "He was. And Mama, she was strong in a different way. Gentle, but unmovable, like water carving stone. She taught me that persistence doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means flowing around obstacles until you find your path. Caleb felt his throat tighten. They raised you well, Lily. Whatever happened to them, they made sure you could survive it. Yeah. Her voice cracked slightly. They did. They sat in silence, and Caleb understood they were sharing a moment of grief. Not the loud, dramatic kind that demanded attention, but the quiet, private kind that settled into your bones and changed you. After a while, Lily wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. When we go to Jerome, if we don't find anything, if there's no trace, I think I need to accept they're gone. I need to stop searching and start living. That's a hard choice. Everything worth doing is hard. Papa taught me that too. She looked at Caleb with those gray eyes that seemed too old for her face. But I don't want to do it alone. I know you're a drifter. I know you've got your own path. But would you? Could you stay? At least until I figure out what comes next? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Caleb had been running for 3 years, running from grief, from guilt, from the responsibility of caring about anything. Saying yes meant stopping, meant staying in one place, meant letting himself care about this girl's future with all the risk that entailed. But looking at Lily, brave, persistent, determined Lily, who'd been alone for 2 years and still chose to ask for help, Caleb found he couldn't say no. I'll stay, he said. However long you need. Relief flooded Lily's face. Really? Really, we'll go to Jerome, we'll search the route. And after that, whatever you decide, I'll be there. Lily threw her arms around him in a sudden, fierce hug. Caleb froze for a moment, unused to such contact. Then slowly, carefully, he hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. Thank you for not leaving me alone. You're not alone anymore, Lily. I promise. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I should sleep. Mrs. Chen wants me up early to help with breakfast. Go on. I'll see you in the morning. She called Scout and headed inside. Caleb stayed on the porch, feeling the weight of his promise settle over him like a mantle. He'd failed before. Failed his wife, his son, his brother. The fear of failing again was enormous, but somehow, making this promise to Lily felt different. Felt right in a way nothing had felt right in 3 years. Maybe that was the lesson. Maybe healing didn't come from running away from responsibility. Maybe it came from choosing to care again, despite the risk, despite the fear. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. Somewhere out there, Thomas and Evelyn Hart might lie in unmarked graves, or maybe they'd met some other fate. Caleb didn't know. But he knew that their daughter was inside, finally sleeping without the weight of absolute loneliness. And tomorrow, she'd wake up knowing someone was staying. Someone cared. That had to count for something. The weeks in Prescott passed with surprising speed. Lily worked for Mrs. Chen, earning coins that she saved in a leather pouch with almost religious dedication. Caleb took jobs too, fixing wagons, hauling freight, anything that kept them housed and fed while building a small reserve of funds. In the evenings, Lily helped the Chen girls with lessons, teaching them the same things her mother had taught her. Caleb watched her patience, her gentle corrections, her delight when they finally grasped a concept. She would have made a wonderful teacher, he thought, in another life, with different circumstances. But this was the life they had. And slowly, something was building between them that neither quite knew how to name. Not quite family, that felt presumptuous. But not just traveling companions either. Something deeper. Something that made them both a little less alone in the world. On their 4th week in Prescott, Caleb woke to find Lily already dressed, her small bundle packed and sitting by the door. Scout stood beside it, tail wagging slowly, as if he too understood what the day meant. You're ready, Caleb said. I've been ready. Lily's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her hat. I just needed to prepare myself. Now I am. They said their goodbyes to Mrs. Chen, who pressed food into Lily's hands and made her promise to come back if she ever needed anything. The Chen girls cried and made Lily promise to write. She agreed, though Caleb noticed she didn't promise to return, and he understood why. Whatever they found on the road to Jerome would change things, would force decisions that couldn't be unmade. The route from Prescott to Jerome cut through high country, pine forests giving way to red rock canyons, then climbing again into juniper-covered hills. It was beautiful and treacherous in equal measure, the kind of landscape that could kill you if you weren't paying attention. Caleb kept them to established trails where possible,
But even those were rough, washed out in places by spring runoff that had come and gone months before. "This is where they would have traveled?" Lily asked on the second day, looking at the narrow track ahead. "Most likely. There weren't many routes through here 2 years ago, still aren't." Caleb studied the terrain with a tracker's eye. If something happened, an accident, an ambush, it would have been in a place like this, remote, hard to reach. Then we looked carefully. They did. Every mile, Lily searched the roadsides, the ravines, the clearings where travelers might have camped. She was methodical about it, treating the search like a survey itself, dividing the territory into sections and examining each thoroughly before moving on. Caleb helped, though he wasn't sure what they were looking for anymore. 2 years of weather would have erased most signs. Scattered belongings, if there had been any, would have been scavenged by animals or passing travelers. But he didn't say this. He just searched alongside her, because that's what she needed. On the third day, they found the first grave. It was unmarked except for a cairn of stones, half collapsed, in a clearing just off the main trail. Lily saw it first and dismounted before Caleb could stop her. She approached slowly, Scout pressed against her leg, and knelt beside the stones. "Someone's buried here," she said. Caleb tied off the horse and joined her. The cairn was old, months at least, maybe longer. The stones had settled and grass grew between them. No cross, no marker, no indication of who lay beneath. "Could be anyone," he said gently. "Travelers bury their dead out here all the time. Sickness, accidents. It doesn't mean—" "I know." Lily pulled out her journal and made a careful note of the location, sketching the clearing and the position of the grave. "But I have to mark it, in case." She stood and bowed her head for a moment, lips moving silently. Then she added 3 stones to the cairn, rebuilding what had collapsed, and stepped back. "We should keep moving," she said. "We've got a lot of ground to cover." They found 2 more graves over the next week. Each time, Lily went through the same ritual, documenting the location, adding stones, standing in silent respect. Caleb watched her process, understanding she was preparing herself, building a catalog of possibilities, learning to live with uncertainty. Jerome appeared on the 8th day, clinging to the hillside like a stubborn promise. The mining town was smaller than Prescott, but louder, built on hope and desperation in equal measure. Smoke rose from smelters, and the constant sound of machinery echoed through the canyons. They found lodging at a miner's boarding house where the proprietor, a thick-shouldered man named Murphy, looked at them with open curiosity. "You're a ways from anywhere to be traveling with a child," Murphy said. "We're looking for information," Caleb replied. "About a couple that went missing 2 years back, Thomas and Evelyn Hart." Murphy's expression shifted. "Hart. Yeah, I remember that name. Mining company was expecting a surveyor. Paid good money up front, too. Then he never showed. Company folded not long after. Lost their investment when they couldn't get their claims properly surveyed." "Did anyone search for him?" Lily asked. "Some. But 2 years ago, Apache raids were common. A lot of folks disappeared. Sheriff figured they either got ambushed or decided to take the money and run." Murphy shrugged. "Happens more than you'd think." "My father wouldn't run," Lily said, her voice hard. "He made commitments. He kept them." "I'm not saying he did, girl. Just telling you what folks thought." Murphy softened slightly. "Look, I didn't know your father, but I knew the man who hired him, a fellow named Carson. He's still in town, runs a supply shop now. Might be worth talking to him." They found Carson's shop near the edge of town, a ramshackle building selling mining equipment, food staples, and whiskey in equal measure. Carson himself was a lean man with tired eyes and hands scarred from hard work. "Thomas Hart," he said when Lily showed him the tintype. "Yeah, I remember him. Professional fellow. We corresponded by letter, worked out all the details. He was supposed to arrive in early April of '81. Sent word he was leaving Prescott, should arrive within 2 weeks. Then, nothing." "Did you try to find out what happened?" Lily asked. "I sent men to search the route. They found nothing, no signs of struggle, no belongings, no bodies. It was like your father and his wife just vanished." Carson poured himself a measure of whiskey. "Cost me everything, that did. Couldn't survey without him, couldn't expand without surveying, lost my investors, had to liquidate the company. This shop's all I got left." The bitterness in his voice was palpable, but there was also something else. Regret, maybe, or guilt. "You think they're dead," Lily said flatly. "I think the frontier kills people, and sometimes it don't leave evidence. I'm sorry about your folks,
But after 2 years, you might need to accept they're gone. Maybe. Lily's jaw tightened. But I need to be sure. You said your men searched the route. How thoroughly? Thoroughly as they could. Took them 3 days, covered the whole stretch from Prescott to here. 3 days isn't enough for that much ground, Caleb said. Not if you're searching off trail. Carson's eyes flashed. My men did their best, and they found nothing because there was nothing to find. Or they weren't looking in the right places. Lily leaned forward. Mr.
Carson, my father was a surveyor. He understood terrain. If he ran into trouble, he would have looked for defensible positions, high ground, water sources. He wouldn't have just stayed on the main trail. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting your men searched where they expected to find something, but maybe they needed to search where my father would have gone.
Carson studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. You're your father's daughter, I'll give you that. Same stubbornness. He pulled out a map, spreading it on the counter. These are the areas my men covered. You think you can do better, you're welcome to try. But I'm telling you, girl, you're chasing ghosts. Then at least I'll know I tried everything. Lily copied the map carefully into her journal, marking the areas that had been searched and noting the gaps between them. Outside, the afternoon sun was harsh and bright. Lily stood in the street studying her notes while Scout sat patiently beside her. What are you thinking? Caleb asked. I'm thinking Carson's men searched the obvious places. But Papa was smart. If he and Mama were in danger, he'd have taken them somewhere defensible. Somewhere with resources. She traced a line on her map. There are gaps here. Areas his men skipped because they were too far off the main trail. Lily, searching all of that would take weeks, maybe months. I know, but I have to try. She looked up at him, and he saw determination burning in her eyes. This is my last chance, Caleb. If we search those gaps and find nothing, then I'll accept they're gone. But I can't live with myself if I don't look. Caleb wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she was setting herself up for more heartbreak, but he also understood that this was necessary. That Lily needed to exhaust every possibility before she could move forward. Okay, he said, we'll search, but we do it smart. We stock up on supplies, we plan our routes carefully, and if the weather turns or we run into trouble, we come back. Agreed? Agreed. They spent 2 days preparing. Caleb bought supplies while Lily studied her map, talking to everyone she could find who knew the territory. An old prospector gave her information about springs and caves. A freight driver told her about a box canyon where travelers sometimes sheltered during storms. A Apache woman selling baskets described a hidden valley where wild horses gathered, protected by red rock walls. Lily collected all of it, building a picture of the landscape that went deeper than any official map. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Places her father might have chosen, places that offered safety and resources. On the third day, they rode out with enough supplies for 2 weeks. The first location was a spring-fed canyon 8 miles off the main trail, accessible only by a narrow path that wound through broken rock. It took them most of the day to reach it, and when they arrived, Lily immediately began searching. She was methodical. She checked the caves where travelers might have sheltered, examined the areas around the spring for signs of old camps, searched through brush and rockfall for anything that might have been left behind. Caleb helped, though the rational part of his mind kept saying they were wasting time. But then Lily called out, "Caleb, here!" He found her in a shallow cave, kneeling beside something half buried in dirt and debris. As he got closer, he saw it was a leather satchel, rotted and falling apart, but unmistakably man-made. Lily's hand shook as she carefully opened it. Inside, protected by the leather, were papers, survey notes, calculations, and at the bottom, a letter in a woman's handwriting. "My dearest Lily," Lily read aloud, her voice breaking. "If you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. Your father and I are in a cave near a spring, and he's very ill. Fever, infection, I'm not sure. We had an accident on the trail. The wagon wheel broke on a steep grade, and we went over the edge. Your father was thrown clear, but injured his leg badly. We managed to reach this place, but he's getting worse, not better." Lily stopped, tears streaming down her face. Caleb wanted to take the letter from her, to spare her what came next, but she kept reading. "I've tried everything I know, but I don't have proper medicine. I'm going to leave this letter and our important papers here, then try to reach Jerome for help. I'm marking the route as best I can. If something happens to me, if I don't make it back, please know that we love you more than anything. Your father's last clear words were about you.
He said to tell you to be brave, to be strong, to live a full life. He said you have everything you need inside you already. Mama loves you. Papa loves you. They searched until darkness made it impossible to continue. In the morning, they searched again. And on the second day, in a deeper cave further up the canyon, they found what was left of Thomas Hart. The skeleton was mostly intact, positioned as if he'd been lying down when he died. Beside him were more surveying tools, a pocket watch that had stopped, and a small journal. Lily gathered everything with trembling hands while Caleb prepared to give the man a proper burial. "I want to read his journal," Lily said. "Are you sure?" "I need to know his last thoughts." The journal was brief. Entries describing the accident, Thomas's pain, his gratitude for Evelyn's care. Then, as the fever got worse, the entries became shorter, harder to read. The last one was dated 3 days after the accident. "Evelyn went for help this morning. Pray she makes it. So tired now. Hard to think. If anyone finds this, please tell my daughter Lily that I love her. That she was the best thing I ever did. Tell her to be brave. Tell her the world needs people like her, people who don't give up. Tell her—" The entry stopped there. Thomas Hart's final words, interrupted by death. Lily closed the journal and pressed it to her chest. Then she nodded at Caleb. "Let's give him peace." They buried Thomas Hart in the canyon, building a cairn of stones that would last. Lily carved his name and dates on a flat rock using her knife, working with painstaking precision. When it was done, she stood for a long time, saying goodbye to the father she'd been searching for. "We need to find Mama," she said finally. "She made it out of here. But if she died between here and Jerome, there might be another grave. Or maybe she made it to town, but was too weak to survive." They returned to Jerome and spent days searching records, talking to old-timers, checking every cemetery and burial ground. Finally, they found a record at the small church. A woman matching Evelyn's description had been brought in by a freight driver, barely alive, raving about her husband and daughter. She'd died the next day and been buried in the church cemetery. The grave was marked only with a wooden cross that said, "Unknown Woman, May 1881. Lily stood over her mother's grave, dry-eyed now. All the tears had been used up. All that remained was acceptance. "I found them," she said quietly. "I finally found them." "You did," Caleb said. "They tried to get back to me. Right up until the end, they tried." "They loved you, Lily. That's what all of this proves. They loved you enough to fight until they had nothing left." Lily nodded slowly. Then she knelt and placed wildflowers on her mother's grave, the same kind she used to put in the tin cup back in Arizona. "I'm going to live a good life," she said, speaking to the grave. "Like you and Papa wanted. I'm going to be brave and strong, and I won't give up. And I'm going to make you proud." She paused. "I promise." They stood in the cemetery as the sun moved across the sky, and Caleb watched Lily go through her private grief. He didn't intrude. This was her moment, her closure. All he could do was be present. Finally, Lily stood and turned to him. Her face was different somehow. Still sad, still marked by loss, but also lighter, as if a weight she'd been carrying had finally been set down. "I'm ready to go now," she said. "Where to?" "I don't know yet, but somewhere forward, not back." They returned to the boarding house where Lily slept for 12 hours straight, exhausted by emotion and physical searching. When she woke, she seemed calmer, more settled. "I've been thinking," she said over breakfast, "about what comes next." "What have you been thinking?" "I can't keep wandering. Mama and Papa wouldn't want that for me. They wanted me to have an education, a future. So I need to figure out how to build one." "That's mature thinking." "I don't feel mature. I feel lost." Lily pushed her eggs around her plate. "But I also feel like I can be lost and still move forward. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." "I want to go back to Prescott. Mrs. Chen said there's a school there, a real one, with a proper teacher. I could enroll, keep working for her to pay my keep, and maybe—" She looked at him hopefully. "Maybe you could stay too, not forever, just until I figure things out." Caleb felt his chest tighten. He'd been drifting for 3 years, and part of him wanted to keep drifting. But a bigger part, the part that had been growing since he met Lily, wanted to stay. Wanted to be the stable thing in this girl's life. "I'll stay," he said, "as long as you need me." Relief washed over Lily's face. "Thank you for everything, for helping me search,
for not giving up even when it seemed hopeless, for being here. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do, because you didn't have to help me. You chose to, and that choice changed everything. They left Jerome 3 days later, after Lily had purchased a proper headstone for her mother's grave and made arrangements with the church to maintain it. The ride back to Prescott was quieter than the ride out. Lily spent long stretches lost in thought, processing everything they'd learned. But there were also moments of lightness. Scout chasing rabbits, Lily laughing at something silly, the easy companionship of two people who'd been through something difficult together and survived. When they reached Prescott, Mrs. Chen welcomed them back with tears and questions. Lily told her everything: the graves, the letter, the final discoveries. Mrs. Chen held her close and promised her a home for as long as she needed one. That evening, sitting on the familiar porch, Lily turned to Caleb. "I've made a decision," she said. "What's that?" "I want you to be more than just someone staying nearby. I want—" She struggled with the words. "I know you're not my father. Nobody could replace Papa. But you've been taking care of me like family would. And I feel safe with you. So I was thinking maybe you could be, I don't know what to call it, my guardian? My family," Caleb said quietly. "The word you're looking for is family." Lily's eyes went wide. "You mean it?" "I do. We've been acting like family anyway. Might as well name it." He paused, his throat tight. "I lost my family once, Lily. Lost them because I failed them. And I've spent 3 years running from that. But being with you, helping you, watching you be brave when everything was terrible, it reminded me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, about showing up, about caring even when it's hard. So you'll stay? Really stay? Really stay. We'll figure out the details, guardianship papers, legal stuff. But yes, if you want me, I'm staying." Lily threw her arms around him, and this time Caleb didn't hesitate. He hugged her back, feeling something broken inside him start to mend. "Thank you," Lily whispered, "for choosing me." "Thank you for letting me," Caleb said. "You saved me too, just by being who you are." They sat together as stars emerged, as the town settled into night, as Scout dozed at their feet. And Caleb realized that for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't thinking about the past. He was thinking about the future, about getting Lily enrolled in school, about finding steady work, about building a life that meant something. He'd spent so long running from responsibility, convinced he'd only fail again. But Lily had shown him something important. Failure wasn't about making mistakes. It was about giving up, about refusing to try. And he was done giving up. The next morning brought new routines. Caleb found work at a freight company while Lily enrolled in school, her sharp mind quickly catching up on missed lessons. In the evenings, they'd have dinner with Mrs. Chen's family. Then Lily would do her schoolwork while Caleb read or mended equipment. It was simple, ordinary. Everything Caleb had been running from, and it was exactly what they both needed. Weeks turned into months. Lily thrived in school, her teachers praising her intelligence and determination. She made friends with the other children, though Caleb noticed she remained somewhat apart. Older somehow, marked by experiences they couldn't understand. But she was also healing. The sharp edges of grief were softening. She smiled more easily, laughed without guilt, started talking about the future with genuine hope instead of desperate determination. One evening in late fall, she came home from school with an announcement. "My teacher says I could apply to the Territorial Teaching College in a few years. If I keep my grades up, I might get a scholarship." "That's wonderful," Caleb said. "I'd be a teacher, like Mama was." Lily's eyes shone. "I could help other children learn, give them the tools they need to survive, like Papa gave me." "You'd be an excellent teacher." "You think so?" "I know so. You're patient, you're smart, and you understand what it's like to struggle. That makes all the difference." Lily beamed at the praise. Then her expression turned serious. "Caleb, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever think about your family, the ones you lost?" It was the first time she directly asked about them. Caleb set down the harness he was mending and considered his answer carefully. "Every day," he said. "But it's different now. Before, thinking about them was like drowning. All I could feel was the pain and the guilt. But now I can remember the good parts too, can think about them without feeling like I'm being crushed." "What changed?" "You did. You
helping you, watching you grieve and keep going. It taught me that loss doesn't have to destroy you. It can make you stronger, more compassionate. He paused. My wife Sarah, my son Daniel, they'd want me to live, to find purpose, not to waste my life running from ghosts. I think my parents would want the same thing for me, Lily said quietly. To live fully, to be happy, not to spend my whole life grieving. They would. And you know what? I think they'd be proud of how you've handled everything. How you kept searching, how you never gave up, but also how you knew when it was time to move forward. Lily smiled through sudden tears. I miss them. I always will. But I'm not alone anymore. I have you. I have Mrs. Chen and her family. I have Scout. I have a future. You do. We both do. That night, Caleb lay in his narrow bed and realized he'd gone an entire day without thinking about the fire, without feeling the crushing weight of his failures. The guilt was still there. It would always be there, but it no longer defined him. He'd found redemption in an unexpected place, not through grand gestures or heroic actions, but through simple presence, through choosing to show up for a child who needed someone. And somehow, that was enough. The guardianship papers came through in December, making official what had already become true in practice. Judge Morrison, the same man who'd been a deputy when Lily first passed through town, signed the documents with a nod of approval. You're doing a good thing, Reed, he said, handing over the paperwork. Girl needs stability, needs someone who won't give up on her. She won't let me give up, Caleb replied. That's kind of her specialty. Morrison smiled. She's got heart written all over her. Her father was like that too, stubborn as they come, but in the best way. You'll have your hands full when she gets older. I'm counting on it. That evening, Caleb showed Lily the papers. She held them carefully, reading every word twice, then folded them and pressed them to her chest. It's real now, she said. It was already real. This just makes it legal. I know, but having it written down matters. It means if something happens, if we get separated, there's proof. Proof that someone chose me, that I belong somewhere. The vulnerability in her voice reminded Caleb how young she still was. 12 now, but carrying experiences that would have broken most adults. She'd learned to be strong because she had to be, but underneath that strength was still a child who needed to know she was wanted. You belong here, Caleb said firmly. With me. And nothing's going to change that. Lily nodded, blinking back tears. Then she smiled, genuine and bright. Can we celebrate? Maybe get dessert from the bakery? Absolutely. Go get your coat. They walked through Prescott's evening streets, Lily chattering about her school lessons while Scout trotted beside them. The town had become familiar over the months. The shopkeepers knew them. People nodded greetings. They'd put down roots without consciously deciding to, and Caleb realized he didn't mind. After 3 years of drifting, having a home felt right. At the bakery, Mrs. Patterson gave them extra cookies for the special occasion, having heard about the guardianship through the town's efficient gossip network. Lily thanked her politely and shared one cookie with Scout, making the dog perform tricks for each bite. He's getting spoiled, Caleb observed. He deserves to be spoiled. He kept me alive for 2 years. A few cookies are the least I can give him. Lily scratched behind Scout's ears. Besides, being spoiled's not bad if you remember to be grateful. Your mother taught you that? She taught me lots of things. How to be strong but not hard. How to ask for help without being ashamed. How to give without expecting anything back. Lily looked up at the stars beginning to emerge. I think about her lessons every day. Try to live by them. You're doing a good job. Some days I'm not sure. I get angry sometimes. At them for leaving, even though I know it wasn't their choice. At the frontier for being so cruel. At myself for not finding them sooner. That's natural, Lily. Grief isn't neat. It doesn't follow rules. I know. My teacher, Miss Williams, she says grief is like weather. Some days it's sunny, some days it storms, and you just have to learn to live with both. Lily finished her cookie thoughtfully. I like that idea. Makes it feel less like something I have to fix and more like something I just have to experience. They walked back slowly, taking the long route past the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open land. The sky was enormous here, stars so thick they looked like scattered salt. Lily stopped to look up, her expression peaceful. Papa used to point out constellations, she said. Taught me their names, told me the stories behind them. I can still remember most of them. Show me, Caleb said.
So Lily did, pointing out Orion and Cassiopeia, Ursa Major, and the Pleiades. Her voice was confident, drawing on memories that were still vivid even as time passed.
And Caleb listened, learning not just about stars, but about the father who'd taught her. Thomas' heart came alive in Lily's words, patient, curious, determined to pass on knowledge. "He would have liked you," Lily said suddenly. "You think so?" "I do. You're like him in some ways. Quiet, thoughtful. The kind of person who shows love through actions instead of words." She glanced at Caleb. "Mama would have liked you too. She had good instincts about people. She would have known you were trustworthy. I hope I'm worthy of that trust." "You are. You proved it when you stayed, when you helped me search even though you knew we probably wouldn't find anything good. When you chose to be my family even though you didn't have to." They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, and when they reached Mrs. Chen's boarding house, Lily paused at the door. "Thank you, Caleb. For today. For everything." "You're welcome. Now get inside before Mrs. Chen worries." Lily hugged him quickly, then disappeared inside with Scout. Caleb stood on the porch for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on his shoulders. It was a good weight, a purposeful weight. He'd become a father again, in all the ways that mattered, and this time he was going to do it right. Winter came hard that year, bringing snow that blanketed Prescott in white silence. School continued, though some days the children couldn't make it through the drifts. On those days, Lily would study at home, working through her lessons with fierce concentration while Caleb repaired equipment by the fire. One particularly cold afternoon, Caleb came home to find Lily crying over her schoolwork. Not frustrated crying, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. "What happened?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Lily wiped her face roughly. "We had an assignment. Write about your family." And I tried. I really tried, but I couldn't decide what to write. About Mama and Papa, about you, about being lost and then found. It all just came pouring out, and now it's a mess, and let me see. Lily handed over the pages, crumpled from her grip. Caleb read carefully. The writing was raw, honest, jumping between past and present, without clear structure. But it was also beautiful. Lily had written about loss and survival, about the parents who raised her and the guardian who found her, about learning that family could be both born and chosen. "This is good," Caleb said. "It's a disaster. Miss Williams wanted a simple family description, not whatever that is. That's real, that's honest, and it shows how you think, how you feel." Caleb sat beside her. "Sometimes the best writing doesn't follow the rules. It just tells the truth. But what if Miss Williams thinks I'm broken? What if she reads this and decides I'm too damaged to be a good student?" "Then Miss Williams is a fool, which she's not." Caleb handed back the pages. "You're not broken, Lily. You're healing. There's a difference." "How do you know?" "Because I've been both. Broken is when you stop trying, when you give up on yourself and everyone around you. Healing is when you keep going even though it hurts. You're doing the hard work. That's healing, not breaking." Lily absorbed this, her breathing slowly steadying. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "When you lost your family, Sarah and Daniel, how long did it take before you felt okay again?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not sure I ever felt completely okay, but I stopped drowning around the time I met you. You gave me something to hold on to when I didn't even know I needed it. So we saved each other." "Yeah, I guess we did." Lily picked up her pages and straightened them carefully. "I'm going to give this to Miss Williams, as is. Because you're right, it's honest. And if being honest means people think I'm strange, that's their problem. That's the spirit." She returned to her work, and Caleb watched her bent head, the determined set of her shoulders. She was growing up, not just physically, though she'd gained height and strength over the months, but emotionally, mentally, finding her center, learning who she was beyond her grief. Miss Williams loved the essay. She read it aloud to the class, with Lily's permission, and several children approached Lily afterward to share their own stories of loss. A boy whose mother died in childbirth, a girl whose father was killed in a mining accident, children who understood, who'd also learned to carry grief while still living. "I didn't know they'd lost people too," Lily told Caleb that evening. "They always seemed so normal, so undamaged. Everyone's carrying something. Most folks just hide it better. I don't want to hide it, not anymore. Mama and Papa deserve to be remembered, talked about. They were real and they mattered, and pretending they didn't exist just to make other people comfortable isn't right. You're absolutely right. But I also don't want to be defined only by loss. I want to be more than the girl whose parents died. Lily looked at him seriously. How do I balance that? Caleb considered the question. I think you let yourself be all of it. The girl whose parents died and who survived. The student who works hard, the friend who's loyal. The person who loves Scout and helps Mrs. Chen and dreams about being a teacher. All those things together make you who you are. So I don't have to choose between honoring them and living my own life? You honor them by living your life fully. That's what they wanted for you. Lily nodded slowly, processing this. Then she smiled. I'm lucky I found you, you know. Not everyone would understand. I'm lucky you let me find you. Not everyone would have given a broken-down drifter a chance. You weren't broken down. You were just lost, like me. Yeah, like you. Spring arrived gradually, melting snow revealing mud and the first brave shoots of grass. Lily finished the school year at the top of her class, earning praise from Miss Williams and a certificate of achievement that she displayed proudly in her room. Caleb took her fishing to celebrate, and they spent a long afternoon by the creek, not talking much, just existing together in comfortable companionship. I've been thinking about the future, Lily said, watching her line drift in the current. What about it? I want to do something important, something that helps people. Teaching's good, but I want more than that. I want to make a real difference. You've got time to figure it out. I know, but I like planning. Gives me something to work toward. She paused. There's a veterinarian who comes through town sometimes, Dr. Brennan. He treats the horses and livestock. I've been watching him work when he's here. Interested in animals? More than interested. I love them. Always have. And they make sense to me in ways people sometimes don't. Lily reeled in her line, checked her bait. Dr. Brennan says there's not enough veterinarians out west. Says if someone was willing to study, they could make a good living helping ranchers and farmers. That's a big goal. Would require years of education. I know, but I'm not afraid of work, and it would be something Mama and Papa would be proud of, something that combines Papa's scientific mind with Mama's caring nature. She cast her line again. What do you think? I think it's a wonderful goal, and I think you're capable of achieving it if you set your mind to it. You'll help me? Even if it takes years? I'll help you however I can. That's what family does. Lily's answering smile was bright enough to rival the sun. Then that's what I'll do. I'll study hard, save money, and when I'm old enough, I'll find a way to get proper training. We'll find a way, Caleb corrected. Together. They caught 3 fish that afternoon, enough for dinner with leftovers for Scout. Walking back to town, fish strung on a line, Lily seemed lighter somehow, like naming her dream had given it substance, made it real. That evening, after dinner, she sketched in her journal, not writing, but drawing. Animals mostly. Horses, dogs, cattle. Her drawings were careful and detailed, showing genuine observation and skill. You're good at that, Caleb said. Papa taught me. Said a surveyor needed to draw accurately, and the same principles applied to anything. She shaded a horse's mane with careful strokes. I practice whenever I can. Dr. Brennan says understanding anatomy is important for veterinary work. You really have been thinking about this? For months now. Ever since I saw Dr. Brennan set a broken leg on a ranch horse. The way he was patient and gentle, but also confident. The way the horse trusted him, even though it was in pain. I want to be able to do that, to help animals that can't ask for help themselves. Caleb watched her work, seeing not just the child she was, but the person she was becoming. Focused, determined, compassionate. All the best qualities of her parents combined with strength, forged through hardship. Your parents would be incredibly proud of you, he said quietly. Lily looked up, and he saw tears in her eyes. But they were good tears. Healing tears. Thank you, she whispered, for saying that, for meaning it. I do mean it, every word. She returned to her drawing, and Caleb opened a book, and they spent the evening in peaceful coexistence. Outside, Prescott settled into night. Inside, a makeshift family found comfort in simple presence. The years that followed established a rhythm. Lily attended school, worked part-time for Mrs. Chen, and spent every moment she could learning from Dr. Brennan during his visits. The veterinarian recognized her passion and began teaching her formally, how to recognize illness, how to handle frightened animals, how to think through problems systematically. Caleb took permanent work with the freight company, eventually becoming a supervisor. The steady income meant he could save for Lily's future education. He put away every spare dollar, planning for the day when she'd need real training. On her 15th birthday, Lily approached him with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about something important," she said. Caleb set aside the accounts he'd been reviewing. "What's on your mind?" "Dr. Brennan says there's a veterinary college in California. It's expensive and it's far, but it's one of the best in the West. He thinks I could get in when I'm 18 if I keep studying." "That's wonderful news, but it means leaving. Leaving you, leaving Prescott, being gone for years." Lily's voice shook slightly. "And I don't know if I can do that. Not after everything." Caleb understood immediately, the fear beneath her words. She'd lost her parents by separation. The idea of choosing separation, even for good reasons, terrified her. "Come here," he said gently. Lily sat beside him, and he took her hands in his. "Your parents sent you out into the world because they believed in your ability to handle it. They gave you tools and knowledge because they wanted you to succeed, even if they couldn't be there to see it." He paused. "I believe the same thing. You're strong enough, smart enough, capable enough to go to California and thrive. And I'll be here when you come back." "Well, what if something happens? What if nothing happens except you become an excellent veterinarian? What if you go and learn and grow and come back able to help every rancher and farmer in the territory?" Caleb squeezed her hands. "You can't live your life afraid of loss, Lily. Your parents wouldn't want that. I don't want that. But you'll be alone again. I'll be fine. I've got work, friends, a home, and I'll have letters from you telling me about your adventures." He smiled. "Besides, 3 years isn't forever. It'll pass faster than you think." Lily nodded slowly, though worry still clouded her eyes. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Promise me you won't disappear into work or go back to how you were before." "I promise. I'm not that person anymore. You made sure of that." "Okay." She took a deep breath. "Okay, then I'll do it. I'll apply when I'm 18, and I'll make you proud." "You already make me proud. Every single day." They sat together in the late afternoon light, and Caleb felt the bittersweet weight of parenthood. The joy of watching someone grow mixed with the pain of eventually letting them go. But that was the bargain. That was love. The next 3 years passed in a blur of preparation. Lily studied relentlessly, working with Dr. Brennan whenever possible, reading every book on animal medicine she could find. Caleb watched her dedication with equal parts pride and trepidation. She was ready for this next step, but he wasn't sure he was ready to let her take it. When the acceptance letter arrived from the California Veterinary College, Lily read it 3 times before she could speak. "I got in," she whispered. "They accepted me." "Of course they did. You're exceptional. They're offering a partial scholarship. Because of my background, my experience with Dr. Brennan. I'll still need money for living expenses and books, but we've got it. I've been saving." Lily looked at him with wide eyes. "You have? Since the day you told me about your dream, every extra dollar went into an account at the bank. It's yours, for school." She burst into tears, throwing her arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for making this possible." Caleb held her close, blinking back his own tears. "You made it possible. I just helped." The day Lily left for California was the hardest day Caleb had experienced since losing Sarah and Daniel. He helped her pack, checked her travel arrangements twice, gave her a roll of emergency money she protested she didn't need. At the stage depot, with Scout pressed against her leg and her bags loaded, Lily turned to Caleb with tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to go," she said. "I know I need to, but I don't want to." "I know, but you're going to do amazing things, and I'll be right here waiting to hear about every single one of them." "You'll write every week?" "Every week. I promise." She hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Caleb. You saved my life. You gave me a future." "You saved mine first," he said, voice breaking. "Never forget that." The stage driver called for departure. Lily climbed aboard, Scout settling at her feet. Through the window, she pressed her hand against the glass. Caleb matched it from the outside, feeling the separation like a physical pain. Then the stage pulled away, carrying Lily toward her future, and Caleb stood in the dust watching until it disappeared from sight. He returned to an empty house that felt enormous without her presence. Mrs. Chen, understanding, brought him dinner and sat with him for a while. Not talking, just being there.
She'll be fine, Mrs. Chen said finally. She's strong. You raised her well. She raised herself mostly. I just tried not to get in the way. You did more than that. You gave her stability, love, a foundation to build on. Mrs. Chen patted his hand. And now you let her build. Let her.
Caleb kept his promise. Every week, without fail, he wrote to Lily. He told her about work at the freight company, about Mrs. Chen's daughters, who were growing up fast, about Scout's successor, a young shepherd mix he'd taken in after finding it abandoned near the rail yard. He told her small things, ordinary things, the kind of details that made her feel connected to home, even from hundreds of miles away. And Lily wrote back. Her letters arrived like clockwork, filled with excitement and exhaustion in equal measure. She described her classes, anatomy, pathology, surgical techniques. She wrote about the other students, mostly men who'd been skeptical of a woman in their program, until she'd proven herself in practical examinations. She told him about her first time assisting with a difficult birth, about staying up all night to save a horse with colic, about the professor who said she had natural instincts that couldn't be taught. I think about Mama and Papa every day, she wrote in one letter, especially when things get hard. I imagine Papa's steady voice telling me to break problems into smaller pieces. Mama's gentle reminder that compassion matters as much as competence. And then I think about you, about how you taught me that it's okay to be afraid as long as you don't let fear stop you. All of you are with me, even when I'm alone. Caleb read that letter 3 times, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest. But it was a good tightness now. Pride mixed with love, mixed with the bittersweet ache of watching someone you care about become who they're meant to be. The first year passed slowly. Caleb worked, saved more money, fixed up the small house he'd finally purchased on the edge of Prescott. He built extra rooms thinking ahead to when Lily would visit. A space for her. A place that would always be home. Mrs. Chen visited often, bringing food and company. You're doing better than I expected, she said one evening, watching him work on the new addition. I promised her I wouldn't fall apart. Can't break that promise. Still, it's not easy letting go. No, Caleb admitted. But it's necessary. She needs to fly. I just need to make sure there's a place for her to land when she's ready. The second year brought changes. Lily's letters mentioned a young man, a fellow student named Michael, who shared her passion for large animal medicine. Caleb read between the lines, recognizing the tone of someone discovering romance. It made him smile even as it made him feel old. Don't worry, Lily wrote, as if sensing his concerns. Nobody could replace you. You're my family. Michael is something else, something new. But you're constant. You're home. That letter went into the box Caleb kept in his desk, along with all the others. Someday, he thought, she might want to read them again. See how she'd grown, how she'd changed, how she'd become herself. Dr. Brennan visited Prescott that spring and stopped by Caleb's house. Heard from our girl? He asked. Every week. She's thriving. I knew she would. That one's got steel in her spine and gold in her heart. Rare combination. Brennan accepted the coffee Caleb offered. I'm getting old, Reed. Been thinking about retiring. But I can't leave this territory without proper veterinary care. You think Lily might come back when she finishes? I think she'll go where she's needed most, which is here. These ranchers, these farmers, they need someone who understands the land, the animals, the people. Someone who's one of them. Brennan sipped his coffee. I'm planning to offer her my practice when she's ready, if she wants it. Caleb felt hope bloom in his chest. You should write to her. Tell her yourself. I will, but I wanted you to know first. You raised her right, Reed. Against all odds, you gave that lost child a future. She gave me one too. After Brennan left, Caleb sat on his porch watching the sunset and let himself imagine it. Lily returning to Prescott, setting up practice, building a life here. It felt right in a way he couldn't quite articulate. She'd left to find herself, and maybe she'd return having done exactly that. The third year arrived with unexpected speed. Lily's letters grew more infrequent, not because she cared less, but because she was busier. Final examinations. Her thesis on treating cattle diseases common to high-altitude regions. Interviews with potential employers. Then came the letter Caleb had been hoping for. Dr. Brennan wrote to me about his practice, about maybe taking it over when he retires. I've thought about it a lot, talked to Michael about it, prayed over it even though you know I'm not particularly religious. and I've decided I want to come home. Not because it's safe or easy, but because it's where I'm needed, where I belong. The territory gave me everything, pain and loss, but also you, also purpose. I want to give back. I'll be home in 3 months. Please have coffee ready. I've been dreaming about Mrs. Chen's cinnamon rolls for weeks. Caleb read the letter 4 times, then went to town and bought supplies. He finished the addition to the house, painted it, furnished it with simple but sturdy pieces. He prepared for her return like a man preparing for Christmas, unable to contain his anticipation. Mrs. Chen found him painting trim one afternoon and laughed. "You're like a child waiting for a birthday. It's sweet." "I can't help it. 3 years is a long time." "And she's not the same girl who left. She's a woman now, a professional. You're ready for that?" "I hope so." "You will be. You've always met her where she is, not where you want her to be. That's the secret of good parenting." The day Lily was scheduled to arrive, Caleb was at the stage depot an hour early. He paced. He checked his pocket watch. He tried to appear calm and failed miserably. Then the stage appeared on the horizon, dust rising in its wake, and Caleb's heart started hammering. The stage pulled in. The door opened, and Lily stepped out. She was taller than he remembered, her frame filled out with strength rather than the thinness of childhood. Her hair was still in a practical braid, her clothes sensible traveling wear, but there was something different about her. A confidence. A sureness. She'd left a girl and returned a woman. Their eyes met. For a moment they just stared at each other, taking in the changes 3 years had wrought. Then Lily smiled, that same bright, genuine smile he remembered, and said, "Did you bring Scout?" Caleb laughed, the tension breaking. "He's at home. Didn't think the depot needed that much excitement." Lily crossed the distance between them and hugged him fiercely. "I missed you. Every single day I missed you." "Missed you too. House has been too quiet." She pulled back, looking at him critically. "You look good. Healthy. Happy even." "I am. Especially now." He grabbed her bags. "Come on, let's get you home." The house made Lily cry. She walked through the addition Caleb had built, her space with a desk for studying, shelves for books, a window that looked out over the hills, and tears streamed down her face. "You built this for me." "Of course I did. You needed a proper home to come back to." "It's perfect. Everything's perfect." She turned to face him. "Thank you. For waiting. For believing I'd come back." "Where else would you go?" "Lots of places offered me positions. Good ones too, with better pay, easier conditions. But none of them felt right." Lily sat on the bed, testing it. "This is where I'm supposed to be. I can feel it." Over dinner at Mrs. Chen's, who'd prepared a feast despite Lily's protests, Lily shared stories from California. The difficult cases she'd handled, the professor who'd become a mentor, Michael, who'd taken a position in Colorado, but who she'd stay in touch with as a friend and colleague. "Not romantic anymore?" Mrs. Chen asked with a knowing smile. "We realized we made better friends than sweethearts. He's brilliant with small animals. I'm better with large ones. We'll collaborate when we can, but our paths are different." Lily didn't seem sad about it. "I'm 21. I've got time to figure out romance. Right now, I want to focus on building something that matters." "Dr. Brennan's practice," Caleb said. "More than that. I want to create a veterinary service that actually reaches the remote ranches, the places where animals suffer because there's no one to help them. I've been thinking about it for months. With Dr. Brennan's support and the connections I've made, I think I can do it." Her eyes shone with purpose, and Caleb recognized that look. It was the same determination she'd shown at 10, searching for her parents. The same persistence that had carried her through loss and uncertainty. But now it was focused on building rather than searching. "You'll do it," he said with certainty. "I have no doubt." The transition happened gradually over the next 6 months. Dr. Brennan introduced Lily to his clients, vouching for her skill and dedication. Some ranchers were skeptical. A young woman veterinarian was unusual, but Lily won them over one case at a time. A successful surgery on a valuable bull, a diagnosis that saved an entire herd from disease. Gentle handling of a rancher's beloved horse that no one else could approach. Word spread. Lily Hart was the real thing, smart, skilled, and unafraid of hard work. She'd ride out in any weather, handle any animal, solve problems others gave up on. Caleb watched her build her reputation with quiet pride. She was everything her parents had hoped she'd be and more. She honored their memory by living fully, by helping others, by refusing to let loss define her. One evening, after a particularly long day, Lily came home exhausted and exhilarated. "I saved a mare and her foal today," she said, collapsing into a chair. "Breech birth, complications. The rancher was ready to give up, but I got them both through. They're going to be fine." "That's wonderful." The rancher cried, Caleb. "This huge weathered man just broke down and cried because I saved his horses." She shook her head wonderingly. "Papa used to say the best work is the kind that makes someone's life better." I finally understand what he meant. "He'd be proud of you." "I hope so. I hope they both would be. Mama, too." Lily looked at him seriously. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "I spent 2 years searching for them, desperate to find them, to bring them back. And all that time, they were already with me. And the lessons they taught me, the values they instilled, the person they raised me to be." She paused. "They're not gone. They're just present differently." "That's a beautiful way to think about it. You taught me that. When you said memory isn't just about sounds and faces, it's about carrying people with you." Lily smiled. "I carry all of you. Mama, Papa, you. Everything you've given me, everything you've taught me, it's all part of who I am. And that means none of you can ever really leave." Caleb felt his throat tighten. "You know what I think? I think you're wiser at 21 than I'll ever be. I learned from the best." She stood, stretched. "I'm going to check on Scout, then sleep for about 12 hours. Tomorrow's another long day." After she went to her room, Caleb sat alone with his thoughts. He'd spent 3 years after the fire believing he had nothing left to give, that his capacity for love and care had burned up with his family. But Lily had proven him wrong. She'd needed help, and somehow, in helping her, he'd helped himself. The years continued to roll forward. Lily's practice grew until she needed to hire an assistant, then two. She bought property on the edge of town and built a proper veterinary clinic with space for sick animals to recover. Ranchers who'd been skeptical at first became her most loyal advocates. On her 25th birthday, Caleb threw a party that filled the house and spilled into the yard. Dr. Brennan was there, fully retired now and delighting in Lily's success. Mrs. Chen and her daughters, now grown women themselves. Ranchers and farmers, townspeople and friends, all of them celebrating the woman Lily had become. Toward the end of the evening, after most guests had left, Lily found Caleb on the porch. "Thank you for this," she said, sitting beside him. "It was perfect. You deserve to be celebrated. We both do. You've built a good life here, Caleb. After everything you lost, you didn't give up. That takes courage. I had help, a stubborn 10-year-old who wouldn't let me stay lost." Lily laughed. "Is that how you remember it? Because I remember a broken cowboy who took in a lost child when he didn't have to. We saved each other. Let's agree on that. Deal." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about something. There's been interest from other territories, Wyoming, Montana, even as far as Oregon, about my approach to rural veterinary care. They want me to consult, maybe help establish similar services." Caleb's chest tightened. "You'd have to travel." "Not permanently, just visits, a few weeks at a time. The clinic here is stable. My assistants are capable. And," she looked at him, "and I think it's time. Time to share what I've learned, to help more than just this territory." He understood what she was really saying. She'd found her footing here, proven herself. Now she was ready to spread her wings further. It was natural, necessary, and terrifying. "You should do it," he said. "You should absolutely do it." "You're sure?" "I don't want to leave you." "I'll be fine. You taught me that, remember? How to keep living even when people leave. How to carry them with you." He smiled. "Besides, you'll come back. This is home. Always. This will always be home." Over the next few years, Lily's reputation grew beyond Arizona. She traveled, consulted, taught others her methods. But she always came back to Prescott, back to the clinic she'd built, back to Caleb. And slowly, Caleb felt time catching up with him. His hair went fully gray, his joints ached on cold mornings. The work at the freight company became harder, and eventually he retired, spending his days maintaining the house, tending a garden, watching Prescott grow and change. Lily noticed, of course. She was a veterinarian, trained to see what others missed. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Because you're here, and I'm not leaving you. Not now, Not ever. Lily, you can't make decisions based on me. I'm an old man. You've got years ahead. Exactly. Years I want to spend here, building on what I've created, making Mama and Papa's legacy something that lasts beyond just me. She squeezed his hand. You gave up 3 years of drifting to give me a home. The least I can do is stay and make sure you know you'll always have one too. I don't want to hold you back. You're not. You never have. Everything good in my life came from what you taught me about persistence, about love, about choosing to care even when it's hard. Her eyes filled with tears. I found my parents' graves because of you. I got an education because of you. I became who I am because you believed in me when I was a lost child with nothing but stubborn hope. You had more than that. You had strength, purpose. I just provided support. You provided everything that mattered. Family, belonging, love. Lily wiped her eyes. So I'm staying, not out of obligation, but because this is where I choose to be. With you, in the home we built together. Caleb felt tears on his own face now. Thank you for everything, for saving a broken-down cowboy who didn't think he deserved saving. We saved each other, remember? That was the deal. They sat together in the morning light, hands clasped across the table, and Caleb felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. He'd lost everything once. His wife, his son, his purpose. He'd drifted for 3 years, convinced he was beyond redemption. Then a 10-year-old girl with gray eyes and stubborn hope had asked him a simple question. Mister, do you need help? And changed everything. The years continued. Caleb grew older, his steps slower, but his mind still sharp. Lily's clinic thrived, becoming a training ground for young veterinarians from across the territories. She never married, though she had suitors. When people asked why, she'd smile and say she was too busy building something that mattered. But Caleb knew the real reason. She'd lost her first family to the frontier's cruelty. She'd found her second family through sheer determination and grace. And she'd learned what her parents and Caleb had taught her, that family wasn't about biology or convention. It was about choice, about showing up, about loving even when it was hard. On a spring morning when Caleb was 70, he woke to find Lily sitting by his bed. You scared me, she said. You slept later than usual. Just tired, old age catching up. Maybe. She helped him sit up, brought him coffee. But you're still here, still stubborn as ever. Learned from the best. They sat together in comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the sun rise through the window. Caleb thought about the journey that had brought them here. A lost girl and a broken man, finding each other in the Arizona desert, building something neither could have built alone. Do you ever regret it? Lily asked suddenly. Taking me in? Giving up your freedom to raise someone else's child? Never. Not one once. You gave me back my life, Lily. You reminded me that I could still matter, still contribute, still love. He reached for her hand. You were the greatest gift I never knew I needed. You were mine too. Mama and Papa gave me life and tools to survive, but you gave me a home when I had nothing, a future when I'd almost given up hoping. She squeezed his hand gently. You know what the best part is? What's that? I get to give back now, to care for you the way you cared for me, to make sure your last years are comfortable and full of love. She smiled. That's what family does, right? We take turns carrying each other. Right. That's exactly right. Caleb lived 5 more years, watching Lily's clinic expand to serve 3 territories, watching her train dozens of young veterinarians, watching her become a legend in her field, known throughout the West for her skill and compassion. But more than that, he watched her live fully, saw her laugh with friends, play with the neighbors' children, ride out in all weather to help animals in need, saw her honor her parents' memory not through grief, but through living exactly the kind of life they'd hoped for her. On his last day, surrounded by people who loved him, Lily holding one hand, Mrs. Chen holding the other, Scout's successor sleeping at his feet, Caleb looked at the ceiling and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Forgiveness for the fire he couldn't stop, the family he couldn't save, the years he'd wasted drifting. He'd made mistakes, failed people, lost his way completely, but he'd also done something right. He'd found a lost girl and helped her find herself. He'd become a father again when he thought that chance was gone. He'd learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth living. Thank you, he whispered to Lily. For what? for asking if I needed help, for giving me a reason to keep going, for letting me be your family. Lily's tears fell on his hand. Thank you for saying yes, for staying, for loving me when I had nothing to offer but trouble. You offered everything that mattered: purpose, hope, a second chance. His eyes drifted closed. The last thing he heard was Lily's voice, steady and strong, saying the words she'd said so many times before. I love you, Caleb. You're my family. Always. And Caleb Reed, broken cowboy turned devoted father, died knowing he'd done the one thing that mattered most. He'd shown up for someone who needed him, and in doing so, he'd found his way home. The funeral was attended by hundreds: ranchers and farmers, townspeople and friends, veterinarians from across 3 territories, all of them coming to pay respects to a man who'd lived quietly but loved deeply. Lily stood beside his grave, the one he'd chosen himself, on a hillside overlooking Prescott where the sunset was particularly beautiful, and spoke with the same clear voice she'd used at 10, searching for her parents. Caleb Reed taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice, about showing up even when it's hard, about loving people not because you have to, but because you want to. She paused, composing herself. He lost everything once and thought he had nothing left to give, but he gave me everything: a home, an education, a future. And more than that, he gave me proof that broken things can heal, that lost people can be found, that love is always worth the risk. She placed flowers on his grave, wildflowers, the kind she used to collect as a child. I was a lost girl searching for parents who were gone. He was a broken cowboy running from pain. We found each other in the Arizona desert and built something neither of us expected: a family, not perfect, not conventional, but real and lasting. Lily looked out over the assembled crowd. Caleb would want you to know that it's never too late to choose love, to show up for someone, to build something that matters. He proved it every day we were together. She knelt and touched the headstone, simple granite with his name and dates, and underneath, the words she'd chosen. Beloved Father. He chose love. After the service, people offered condolences, shared stories about Caleb's quiet kindness, his steady presence, the way he'd helped build Prescott into a real community through small, consistent acts of care. Mrs. Chen hugged Lily tightly. He died happy. Knowing he mattered, that's more than most people get. I know, and I'm grateful. So grateful he found me that day in Arizona. Or I found him. However it worked. You found each other. That's how these things go. The universe brings together the people who need each other most. Lily returned to the clinic the next week, throwing herself into work the way she'd learned from both her fathers. Thomas Hart had taught her to break problems into manageable pieces. Caleb Reed had taught her that showing up was half the battle. She used both lessons, treating animals, teaching students, building on the legacy they'd all created together. Years passed. The clinic grew into a full veterinary hospital. Lily's methods were taught in colleges across the country. Young women wrote to her, saying she'd inspired them to pursue veterinary medicine despite societal resistance. On her 50th birthday, Lily stood on the hillside where Caleb was buried and spoke to him like she used to speak to the stones when she was 10. I did it, Caleb. Everything we talked about. Everything you believed I could do. The clinic serves 5 territories now. I've trained over 100 veterinarians, and every single one of them knows your story, knows that a broken cowboy and a lost girl built something that changed the West. She paused, looking out over the valley. I never married, never had children of my own. People think that's sad, but it's not. I had a family. I had parents who loved me enough to give me every tool I needed to survive. I had a father who chose me when I had nothing, and I had a purpose that filled every day with meaning. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers. You taught me that loss doesn't have to destroy you, that grief can make you stronger if you let it, that showing up is the most important thing we can do for each other. Lily smiled. I carry all of you with me, Mama, Papa, you. Every lesson, every moment, every act of love. You're not gone. You're just present differently. She placed fresh flowers on his grave, the same ritual she'd performed for 20 years. I hope you found them, Caleb, wherever you are. I hope you found Sarah and Daniel and you got to tell them about me, about how we saved each other, about how love always finds a way, even in the most unlikely places. Lily stayed until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Then she walked back to town, to the clinic, to the life she'd built from loss and determination and stubborn hope. And as she walked, she felt them with her. All of them. Thomas and Evelyn Hart, who'd given her life and the tools to survive. Caleb Reed, who'd given her a home and taught her that family was a choice. They lived in every decision she made, every animal she saved, every student she taught. She'd been a lost girl once, wandering the frontier alone, searching for parents who were gone. She'd met a broken cowboy who was running from pain and failure. Together, they'd built something beautiful. A family that proved blood wasn't the only thing that mattered. A legacy that would outlast them both. The frontier had taken everything from both of them, but it had also given them each other. And that, Lily thought, walking into the sunset with purpose in her step and peace in her heart, was more than enough. It was everything.